Welcome to another virtual Live Talks Los Angeles event. We welcome Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Glennon Doyle to our series. We invite you to visit our YouTube channel for over 300 conversations much like this. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, where our handle is Live Talks LA. Priyanka Chopra Jonas's new memoir is Unfinished. Priyanka is a multi-award-winning actor, producer, philanthropist, and one of the most recognized personalities in the world. A former Miss World, she made her movie debut in 2002 and has appeared in more than 60 films produced in India and the United States. Glennon Doyle is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Love Warrior, an Oprah Book Club selection, as well as the follow-up Carry On Warrior and Untamed. I am Ted Haptagaber, founder and producer of the series. At the end, I will pose some questions you in the audience sent to us. And from here, I'll let Glennon take it.
Well, hello, Priyanka. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing this. You're so kind.
Oh, it's such an honor. I've adored you for a very long time. I didn't know.
Same.
Thank you. I didn't know your story. I didn't know how you became such a freaking badass. And now I do know. I do know. And I just want to tell you before we start talking about this that I read constantly. It's all I really want to do with my life. And I love this book. You did such a beautiful job. And you have a story that it is hard to do justice to because it's so layered and so nuanced and so beautiful. And it's beautiful, Priyanka. Well done.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I was so nervous
It
that you were going to read it.
It moved me. I read passages aloud to my girls and to my wife. I figured out some things that, okay, so just real quick, my whole family calls me Dee Dee because it's a long story. I didn't know that Dee Dee means older sister. It's like all of these things were meant to be. So I'm obsessed with titles. I never know the titles of my books until they're done and finished. I love your title, Unfinished. How did you come up with the title? When, how, what does it mean to you?
It's funny, actually. I was doing a Vogue interview and they just, you know how they ask you rapid fire questions, and it was 73 questions. And they were like, if there was ever a memoir that you would write, what would you call it? And it was just a thing I said. I was like, I'll call it Unfinished, because I just feel like there's so much more I want to do with my life, and there's so many more aspirations I have. And that's something I've always sort of strived for, is to be able to like break through and do something for the first time. And I still feel like I'm doing it, and I was 20 years in the movie business, in the entertainment business. So I wanted to commemorate it. I've always wanted to write. I'm a little shy of writing because it's a crazy, crazy job, as you obviously know. So I've written op-eds and stuff but I was afraid of structured writing, like a novel, a memoir, or even a screenplay. But quarantine helped me have that time. I was home for 6 months. In fact, I read your book, Untamed, during that time as well. And it was very inspiring to, think of being bold while I was reading your book and writing mine. And I kind of felt, maybe it was a daunting time in the world or whatever, but for some reason, while I was writing it, I just kind of went deeper than I'm used to. I had to take some things out of the book because I wrote it because I wrote it like a journal, and I was like, just get through it, because that was the only way to scratch beneath the surface. That's in a way. Right. And it would have been so easy for me to actually write my book the way I'm used to conducting myself, which is, I let the world see a part of me, but no one's ever really knows me. And I've gotten away with that for so many years, so I could have done that with the book, but then I knew I was cheating myself. Mm-hmm. And I just, it took me in somehow.
I love that you had to take stuff out. I remember sending the first manuscript of Love Warrior to my editor and saying, it's 75,000 words. And she said, yeah, but Glennon, 30,000 of them are the F word. So we can't, it's actually a very short book. It is when you write, you have to let it all go, right? And then you can put it back in.
Yeah. That's great.
What did you, it's so interesting that quarantine helped though, right? It was the forced stillness of that time that allowed us to go deep. What was
I would
the
have
hardest part for you?
never, all of it was hard. I think with my life, how it was in general, with being on a flight every 3 days, being in another country, having a schedule that was insane, I would have never, ever had the time to do it the way I did. It would have been another book, I think. It would have been a little bit more superficial and, I would have checked the boxes. It would have been the right thing, but it would have never been, I'm terrified of this book because of how open I am about myself in it. But the hard part really was when I sat down to write it, I really type slow, but I think really fast. So I couldn't type as fast as I was thinking. Then I tried to write and I couldn't write as fast as I was thinking. And I was like, God damn it, what do I do? So I started recording myself. I used to sit outside in this amazing atmosphere. My collaborator, Nan Satter, she used to help me like all the recordings. We used to figure out, all right, she helped me actually structure the book and told me to think about my life with milestones. And that's how I started writing it because I couldn't remember my whole life. And so she told me, think about it like milestones. So I started with, even what I could remember were my parents' love stories because we heard about them so much as we were growing up. So that was my earliest memory. And I kind of built milestones, developed memories around them, memories which I didn't even remember I had. I had to corroborate stories with my family. I would call my mom, I would call my cousins. I'd be like, did this happen? Or was what I was feeling, was that how it really happened? And it's really funny how memories are. Like my memory is very different than what my mom's or my aunt's memory would have been, which is why I've sort of written it also from like a lens of me now at 38, looking back at my younger 4-year-old or my younger 12-year-old or whatever, but it was not the easiest thing to do.
Well, that idea of putting it in milestones, that's how I read it. It just felt like, oh, these are the shining memories, the bright memories, and then everything was built around that, which was so beautiful because that's how we live.
That's totally
we don't remember, our stories aren't in chronological order. They're in big shining memories one at a time, right?
But memory is also such a crazy thing. If you think about how, not that I know much about it, but how it works in the mind is memory is not like stored in one part of the brain. It's divided and it goes into like whatever the other parts of the brain are. And whenever we remember it again, they kind of collectively come together to create that memory, which is why we always have sort of a different sensory experience of what that memory was like as we grow. So they change,
And sometimes they're not even real. I've had memories where my dad then has to tell, I write them down for a book, and my dad finally tells me he's been making that crap up. I don't even have that memory. It's a family story that he just made up. It's so strange when you try to write your life down. It's like, what's real? What's perception? That's why I think
it really is
nice, because it's not biography.
Exactly. It's not a biography. It's memories, hence memoir.
Trust me, this is the best I can do with what happened, I think.
Basically. This is all you get. This is
you
all
brought up your dad. You brought up your parents. Can we just talk about, you said the love story. I mean, tell me if I'm remembering this right. What I remember is that the third time your parents danced, your dad asked your mom to marry him.
Yeah.
And your mom said she wasn't ready. And he said, how will you know when you're ready? And she said, wait, can I just read this? Hold on. She said something about hearing the bells, okay? She said, at the party, during their third dance, Dad asked Mom if she would marry him. Dumbfounded, she said she wasn't ready to marry anyone yet. What will make you ready, he asked. Some bell will ring somewhere that you're the guy for me, she said. And for the next 2 dances, he kept asking, did you hear the bells? Did you hear the bells? Please stop. Okay, that's my new favorite.
That's how they used to tell it.
And said, don't you dare even think about committing to yourself until you hear the damn bells. So did you have an experience like this? I had an experience a little bit like this with my wife when I met her, when I first finally fell in love for the first time. Did you have this experience with your now husband, Nick?
I do think so, but mine was a little different. I didn't hear the bells for a while. I just kind of rode this wave that was Nick. He was so different from anyone I'd ever experienced. He's quiet, but he has so much power in that silence. He leads with boldness and conviction, and he's self-assured. He loves watching me shine and gets so much joy and pride from it. And I was so confused when he came into my life. I was like, what is this specimen of man that I have not sort of experienced in 35 years of my life? And I was enjoying it so much, and it just took me away into this place, which I'm so grateful I'm at the moment.
So beautiful. And you talk about your dad and the loss of your dad so beautifully, Priyanka. That's one of my favorite parts of the book, is that I feel like you really, I cannot imagine yet. I haven't lost a parent yet. So the bond, the beauty that you and your father shared, and then to have that loss so young. Well, he was 63.
Yeah, he was only 63.
Right. And the way you write about grief is so beautiful and real and true. Talk to us about grief, because nobody talks about that enough. And then
Yeah.
how is it different now than it was then? How has it changed you?
I mean, at that time it was all consuming, I think. And it wasn't just not dealing with dad's death. It was, I was shutting down on a lot of things. I'd moved into America at that point for my TV show Quantico. I didn't know anyone in this country. All my family was away. My life was only going to set and back, and I used to do 15-hour days, flying on the weekends. And no family, no connections, no friends. Had just broken up. I might not dealt with the death of my dad, new beginnings, endings. It was just so overwhelming at that point that I got sucked into this seduction of sadness, which it is. There's a comfort in getting into your sweats and inside your blanket and just like not having to deal with the world and incubating. And I'm an extrovert. I love people. I love connection. I love human beings and energy. And it was just not me. And I didn't ask for help, which would have probably made that duration shorter. But I tried therapy, didn't work for me with a few people, and I didn't want to speak to my mom and my brother because they were dealing with that loss and grief themselves. So I kind of had to figure it out myself, and it went on for about a good 2 years. I had the ability to work through it, but I was on a path of self-destruction, and I just had to, I don't know, one day after 2 years, I came to a point where I was like, you're going to lose everything that you have spent so hard building. My career is self-made. It was never offered to me or given to me. My parents were my greatest champions. My dad was my biggest cheerleader when it came to my career. When I signed a new movie, we would order dinner, he would open champagne. It was like, by my 55th movie, I was like, Dad. But he was still that guy. Having lost that was a sense of silence, and that silence is deafening. So I think I just had to pull myself out of it, because I was like, I don't want to lose my lease on life, which is my work. I'm an artist and I have to create, and if I can't create, I lose all of these tangible things which I've broken my back building. That was one incentive. The second one was, as seductive as sorrow was, light was always what I chose, even though it was harsh at that point, and even though it was difficult to come out of the dark. But lightness, if you walk into the light, you somehow it gives you life, and you have to choose to walk into light. It doesn't have to be a big choice. I made small tangible changes. I wouldn't stay in a routine, like when you're like sort of sad, you go back in the same couch that you like, or the same bed that you like, and the same routine. You make a drink, you'll have a food, you'll do the same things. I started breaking that. I would go out with my dog, or I'd meet friends, or I'd make a phone call. I deliberately started doing things that were outside of my comfort zone. Even if I didn't feel like, I'd push myself to go out and meet friends. And slowly, I think I just started coming out of that darkness. I started choosing myself. I started working out. I started eating better. Um, I started liking myself again. But it took literally me choosing myself and saying, this is not about, not my father who died, not my relationship, not the new country. This is not about anybody else. The longest relationship that I will ever share with me is me. And hence me developing that sort of theory, which I talk about in the beginning of the book of, we're all on a solitary journey. We get so invested in, the people that come into our life, including our parents and our children, but everyone has their own journey. Everyone is the nucleus of their own molecule. So they're going to come in and out of your train for however duration, whatever the duration they're supposed to be in it for. And you can't hold on to that. What you can hold on to is that time that you spend together, and how you remember it, or how you choose to forget it, or how you experience it. That's all we can do. And so it just took the pressure off of me. And it was an evolution into finding joy. And I think, I manifested a lot of it.
Good God. Yes to all of that. Retweet. And it's so fascinating to hear you talk about great, great loss and great grief. And then what gets you out of those things is little things. It's like, I'm an introvert and deal with depression. And I have found what you're saying, that like, a few times a day, I decide that I hate my life and I hate everyone, and I need a new religion, and I need a new family, and I need a new house, and I need a new job. And then really what I need is a glass of water. Or like,
totally true.
Or like you said, I need to walk my dog for 5 minutes, and I will have I love that, because even the big feelings and the big pain, it's the little things that get us out of it. So gorgeous. Okay, so this book is dedicated to your dad. I want to read. You have this fascinating quote that I think your dad brought to you, which is the "Be like water." Mm-hmm. And I want to talk to you about this, because I think it's so fascinating when it comes to you and all of your and bothness. You're right. Like this and that, all the things at once, which I find so wonderful about you. Okay, here's the quote. Be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle and it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. And you talk about that and how it has applied to your life in many different situations. When you had to go to boarding school, you changing to different environments, right? Adjusting. But what is so wild about you is that you adjust so beautifully and are also extremely assertive, extremely bold, extremely yourself, right? So like, talk to us about that, like how the end both of being a woman and being a woman with a big voice and a big life, and how you have to be like water sometimes and adjust, and how sometimes you cannot adjust, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes you should not adjust. But what being like water sort of means is, when new circumstances are thrown at you, water can be a waterfall too. Water can drive a crevice in a rock once it has consistency for years. Water can shape mountains. The power that water has is consistency. It's powerful. It can adjust, but it can adhere, but it can also carry you away with its tenacity and its power. And I found that when my dad used to say, be like water, and he meant, because we were in the military, we used to move every 2 years. So he was like, you can be whoever you want when you go to, a new school. Even if your teacher here doesn't like you, no, the next one won't know. So that was great. It made me feel so free. And it was a real sense of power. But in all the various circumstances that I have been in my life, the changes that have happened in my life, which have been a lot over time, the one thing I've never had is, like stability. I've never had like one home and one school and like one place. But where I find stability is in myself. I'm the same. The world changes around me. I am the same in terms of my journey is my evolution. I thought a certain way 10 years ago, and now I've grown enough to not think that way anymore. I'm like water. I've adjusted to where I am right now. Your environment informs who you are, and it's okay to let your environment inform who you are, and to be open to looking at the environment, imbibing from whatever new circumstances you're in, changing, evolving. There is such a joy to being a different person. Change is the most constant thing in life, and we have to embrace it. There's such a freedom and liberation in being able to embrace that. When you embrace the change within yourself, you can create a change within the world. If we choose to just be, I am who I am, you're not the same person you were yesterday, girl.
Or
I'll tell
10
you that.
minutes ago.
Or 10 minutes ago. Something changed something.
Sometimes at the end of a paragraph, I don't even believe the thing I said at the beginning of the paragraph.
Totally.
How do you feel like you're changing the most right now? What's changing right now?
It's a strange time, I have to say, especially coming out of 2020. I think it's a strange time for all of us. I was thrown into the deep end with going from, being at home for 6 months into like finishing 2 movies, releasing 2 movies, releasing a book, releasing a beauty product. Everything just kind of happened to me. I was used to that pace before 2020. But now I'm kind of like dragging my feet a little. So what's changing now is I didn't realize I had changed, and that I couldn't, like that speed that I ran on. Now I kind of crave a little bit of, I want to have dinner at home, and I want to wrap and go home. And like, I never had those feelings before. And I'm all kinds of confused with wanting to be with my dogs and my husband and my closet and my room. And it's like, what are these weird feelings? It's so new to me.
Interesting. That's so interesting. 2020 got us. You didn't know there was another way.
I didn't even know. It just got me.
Wow.
Bastard 2020.
Wow. So interesting. Okay. So what I feel like if I were watching this, I would want to know right now, you have an incredibly busy life. You have a lot going on, one would say. You also have an unbelievable groundedness and calm about you. What is going on? Like, if this were a scene, remember that scene from When Harry Met Sally when she's like, I'll have what she's having. Like, I want to have what you're having. Like, what is your self-care? How do you take care of yourself? Everyone's talking about self-care right now, but what are the things that you commit to keep this level of beautiful peace? You seem relaxed, which seems like the biggest revolution for a woman on earth right now.
It's so true, but I have to say that this is not my burden to carry alone. I've chosen to have an extremely big career with lots of verticals because, I like multitasking. I like being able to do multiple things. But if it wasn't for my team who bears the brunt of all the stress, I don't think I would be able to have a relaxed approach towards my work. Like, I'm so grateful. My team is predominantly women, and they're the baddest bitches in the planet. You know, they go after what they want, and they fight for me, and they take all my stress, and it gives me the ability to do what I have to, which is deliver on my various jobs. And it's a lot, but they're really my backbone. And I also think, reaching this point in my life, I think with a sense of maturity, having the ability to introspect, this book actually was very healing for me. I dealt with a lot of things I probably wouldn't have dealt with or talked about or thought about. Um, but I did. And also, my husband, I mean, he has a very calming effect on me. He's an extremely introspective man himself. He brings a sense of justice and peace to me in everything. He's not someone who, I'm a storm in a teacup, but he's not.
You can't have two. You cannot.
No, you cannot have to. But he's not. So I've sort of imbibed that from him. I don't know if he's imbibed my stormness, but
I bet he has. I bet he knew he wanted a storm.
he did.
You talked about the book healing you. I think it's so interesting. I noticed you wrote about compartmentalizing as being something that you learned early, and that it's a survival strategy for a lot of us. You called it a tuck box, didn't you? Like that.
Yeah.
I read that to my girls, my daughters. I was like, what do you have in your tuck box? Like the things that we put away to deal with later. What was one thing that was in your tuck box that writing Unfinished brought out? Because what you seem like is a woman who does not have much left in her tuck box, because that is what peace is. It's having dealt with all your shit, right?
I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that I haven't dealt with, which is somewhere buried deep down. But it's not stopping my growth. Like nothing in my life at the moment emotionally is going to stop me from taking steps forward. I believe in wearing blinders and just take a step forward, even if it feels like you can't take 20, just take one step, just keep moving whenever we feel stuck. So I think the one thing that really helped with Unfinished was to deal with all the emotional rejections, failures, my emotional sort of self. I dealt with a lot of that through the book as the chapters sort of evolved, my early career, boarding school, feelings from that time, feelings from moving around, just feelings that, I didn't feel the need to ever talk about. I didn't know I needed to. So it took a big weight off of me, and, gave me the space in my mind to focus on the future instead of being shackled by the past.
Yes. I don't know how anybody survives without writing books. I'll tell you what.
Really? At least have a journal. I will say,
Yes.
Being a first-time author, this is the first time I've ever done this, and I was grateful someone wanted to print it. Thank you, Pam. But just being able to just somehow write it, even recording it really helped me. Guys, there's a lot of people out there that do a lot of selfie videos and stuff. If you're feeling something, do a video diary. I did that too sometimes. Just talk to the camera, and it's somewhere on your phone, put it into a little folder, and you'll see over time the things that you've said to yourself and how you've changed. It's such an interesting process. It took me about 2 years of collecting sort of ideas and data and memories, but I compiled it within quarantine because I had the time and the bandwidth to do it. But it's so great if you don't have access to a friend, a therapist, anybody. Feelings don't give us a warning when they're going to arrive. They just do. And it's just okay to sort of talk to someone and put it out there, even if it's in a pen. I'll definitely say it's healing.
And I love that idea that you said of just speaking it and then listening to it yourself.
Yeah, in a couple of months.
Being your own friend, being your own guide, being your own rock is a theme for you and in your book and your life, and something that we don't talk about enough. We're making vows to other people before we're even making vows to ourselves, right? I think that's part of the piece that you have.
I think so, but I think it really, when you talked about compartmentalize, it's so funny. I'm quarantined here in London with my mom, and she and I were talking about it yesterday because she was reading the book. I mean, she's read it 6 times, but she was still reading the book. And I was talking to her. I was like, if I didn't have the ability to compartmentalize, which is something my mom used to say all the time. She was like, when you go to work and you come back home, that work box shuts outside. When the door shuts, that's outside. It doesn't, the crazy of that or the pressures of that don't come back home onto the dining table. And whatever's happening in your bedroom or your dining table doesn't go to work. When you walk out that door, and my mother is a doctor, and she says that being a physician, she can't have the baggage of, life when she's doing her job. And she said, why shouldn't it work vice versa too? Whatever your pressures in life are, if you compartmentalize them into the different verticals they belong to, then you only feel it when you're dealing with that vertical. And it was so scientific and smart to me. And it just took a little bit of practice, to tell myself that literally, like, all right, I'm stressed out because I'm doing 6 different things at this given moment. I don't have enough time in the day to be able to work out, even, and I'm training for a new job right now, so it's part of what I need to do. But I kind of tell myself, all right, I chose to be in this moment. Every single thing has not been thrust upon me. I've worked for it. I chose
what I wanted.
It's what I wanted. So let's remind ourselves that you chose to be here. And I have to be like, all right, how well can I support myself? And I start thinking about that instead of focusing on how daunting the pressure is,
How well can I support myself? Everyone write that question, that sentence down right now. All right, that's what we're asking.
What do I need to support myself right now? I need, especially in these Zoom times, like I need to be able to tie my hair up because it annoys me so much when it's on my face. I need to be able to, have my reading material in front of me if I'm going to be talking about my book or my movie or my beauty product. Like, what am I talking about? And you know what I'm saying. Make sure that every time, I'm engaging with someone, it's fresh, it's new. There's so many different things that you have to think about. So I literally, like math, think about what I need to support myself. So I have my cup of tea because I'm going to be speaking a lot. I have my water. There you go. I have a little snack right here. And I'm like, all right, I feel supported I can handle the next couple of hours.
This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. Tell me, one of the many things that I adore about you is your commitment to gender equality. This is something that's woven through everything that you do. It's in your book, it's in your work, it's in your production company, it's in your voice, it's in your being. So how did you know, was there a moment that you knew early on that gender equality was even something that needed fighting for? How did this come to be important in your life?
I was raised in a family that treated me and my brother the same way. While I was growing up, I saw that in India, which is where I was growing up, in other parts of the world, especially when I came to America as well, the expectations of girls are so different from the expectations of boys. You know, Even within my family, like my guy cousin could stay out till really late at night, but the girl cousin had to come back home, before it got dark. And it was just like little things which, you know, especially when it comes to low income families, girls were pulled out of school so that the boys could go to school, because she's going to be married off to somebody anyway. So medical treatment in, especially like, when you think about developing economies around the world, there's such a high price put onto the fact that a girl has to be married. When is she settling down? Like, that's the focus. It's not what her choices are, what her career is. So many girls around the world don't even have a choice in their lives, who they're going to marry, what can they have a career, can they go to school, are they prioritized, is their life prioritized? I mean, we're still there when it comes to gender equality for such a large population around the world. that of course we have to fight for it. And of course the women specifically who have a voice, who have a platform, have to band together and show the world that, this is formidable. Like, you're not going to get away with this any longer. Today, we don't even think about our rights to vote. We don't even think about driving a car, getting a job, becoming a CEO, now a vice president, because women before us fought that fight. And women for eons have been told, that we're second-class citizens. Like, we have to work harder to prove a certain point, especially in jobs which have been predominantly, male, sort of engineering and CEOs, the president's office, coming from a country which has had so many women, not as many as there should have been, but several prime ministers and presidents that are female. It's like we're still there right now. And I think that's why the conversation needs to be so loud, is because it's not like it's a necessity. We're 50% of the world's population, and if we don't have that kind of representation in every aspect of our lives, then who's actually making the decisions for the entire population is skewed. A small example I can give you to sort of stress that point, all the technology that we use, our phones, our laptops, Siri, Alexa, everyone's using it, right? Men, women alike. But because there are so few women in AI and engineering, all the programming that is being catered to you, the algorithms, the Alexa speaking to you about what you like, has been programmed by a man. So your choices have been decided by a man. It's as predominantly men. Even entertainment for such a long time, was studio heads, choices decided by men. And now our generation is seeing powerful women because of, I have to give credit to the internet, bringing the world so much closer together, us being able to have a voice that we can share with people, being able to see a sisterhood of women from around the world, saying that you're not alone. That's powerful. And I think that has really lent us to have, for this generation to have the extra power to go that extra mile, to champion our other sisters that probably may not have the opportunity we do, the privilege of being able to have choice in our lives. We have to walk, by example, and, set examples so that people say, oh, okay, that can also happen to a girl. And that, if I really feel very strongly about that, as you can tell.
No, do you? Yeah, you have some feelings about that. What would you, speaking of women coming together and saying you're not alone and that causing real change, I'm thinking about Me Too in Hollywood. What would you tell yourself right now? What do you wish you knew when you started out in Hollywood as a woman? What would you go back and tell yourself that might make the road a little bit smoother, or at least
I started out in Hollywood just about 5 years ago, and I had a lot more ground under my feet by the time I came here. But when I started in the entertainment business back in India, and this is an issue that exists everywhere, it's patriarchal, especially 20 years ago. What I would have told my younger self at that time is, I've written about this in the book, but I stood up for myself. I definitely did. I walked out of one movie. I remember, thinking about the fact that I don't want to be replaceable. That's not the kind of actor I want to be just because I'm a girl. I shouldn't be. I developed all those thoughts, but I never talked about it at that time. I didn't have the courage to talk about it. I didn't bring it up to anyone. I didn't share it with anybody. I didn't make it public, even though I was a public person. Why is crucial, because, I was told as a girl, you work within the system, because otherwise, if you have a bad reputation of being hard to work with, work might not come your way as much, or if people think that, you're troublesome, might not come your way. So smile and go do your job. And I just did that. I smiled and I went to work, and I went to work in environments that I was comfortable in, even if it was smaller roles or smaller movies. But I still didn't have the courage to change the system or to do something to create that change, because I myself was so insecure, and I really wanted to be able to build on this career and this opportunity. And that's such a common theme for so many women in so many ways, is we're told to be meek, and we're told to not have a voice, that you believe it. So I would tell my younger self now, at a more comfortable, confident place in my 30s, I would have told my younger self, have faith in the fact that sometimes you have to push the goalpost further. You have to push to break that glass ceiling. And when I was really young and starting out, 19, 20, kind of didn't know that.
And wouldn't it be wonderful to have a world where girls and women didn't have to decide whether they wanted to sacrifice their own career to move that goalpost? Because that is in effect what we're doing.
Totally. Absolutely.
Because the thing is, they do say we're difficult, and then
Yeah, they do. They do. And then you have that reputation of being like, oh, it could be too much work if you if you sign her, if you take her on. And it's just like, even women, like, we can't say the harsh things or the harsh truth like a guy can. It'll be like, oh, she's not, it's so derogatory, the words that are like, she's a bitch, or she's like, oh, she's too much, or she's too bold. And I think, we have to get to a point in the world where we normalize opinions, and opinionated women. I remember when I was growing up, my parents always told me to have an opinion, even if everyone in the room doesn't agree with me. Because if you don't have an opinion, what do you stand for? So if I was raised in that environment, and I'm a daughter of the same world, girls should be able to have that. It gave me such a sense of self, because my parents didn't treat me differently. My parents, in fact, fanned my spark, and they saw that I had a voice, and they encouraged it. They were excited about it even. And, that made me feel confident. That makes me feel confident when I walk into a room, because I'm like, all right, even if you don't agree with me, let's agree to disagree, because I have an opinion, and this is why I have an opinion. I can legitimize it with why as well. And if girls are given that sort of confidence from when they're young, and told that you can have an opinion, you can seek your vocation, you can be ambitious, you can have a career in wherever you want to have. If we give girls wings, they can not only change their own lives, they change families, they change communities, they change countries.
That's right.
We just need to invest in our girls.
That's right. That's the as they say, the invisible thread that goes in families, in countries, and communities that, for all other intents purposes, should not survive. You look closely.
Absolutely.
It's the women. It's the women. It's the women. So speaking, I know we've got 2 more minutes until our questions, because the world has so many questions for you, Priyanka. But when I think about how the hell you became this human being that you are, I just feel like this little story shows a lot of it. Okay. When I was in kindergarten, you guys, this is Priyanka's book. I'm not just like speaking a story. This is Priyanka speaking. Okay. When I was in kindergarten, my parents and I moved from one army home to another. Outside every house in the new neighborhood was a nameplate, so you knew who lived there. When ours was put up, I saw that it read, Major Ashok Chopra. Am I saying that right? Ashok?
Yep, absolutely correct, actually.
MBBS MS, Captain Madhu Chopra, MBBS DORL. Surprised and hurt, I asked, why isn't my name on the nameplate too? Don't I live in this house? And without missing a beat, my father answered, so what would your name read? I took a few seconds to think. Priyanka Mimi Chopra, upper kindergarten, which was added to the nameplate as Miss Priyanka Mimi Chopra, upper KG. I tell this story because it's such a perfect example of how my parents raised me, with a sense of individuality and as a person who had rights, even at a very young age. When I questioned, I have goosebumps right now, actually. Okay. When I questioned Dad further about it that day, he told me that I was correct to point out the omission. You live in this house too, he'd said. Your name should be on it. Many parents wouldn't have taken a complaint like mine seriously, but he and my mother did. The lasting effect was that I was not shamed for my feelings. My wish to be included, my keen sense of what's fair and not fair, I was taught self-worth. I was given a voice. It is through my voice, I believe, that I can be of most use in this world. They taught you that in kindergarten, and now here you are using your voice in the world, and it's so beautiful and so important.
That story gets me every time. It's
Oh,
crazy.
I need your mom to teach a master class on parenting after this, actually. Would she mind real quick?
Oh, she would love that.
You are beautiful and so vital and important and powerful. And your book, Unfinished, is so beautiful and vital and important and powerful. And I just adore you, and I'm so grateful you're in the world.
Oh, thank you. And then so are you. I felt like that when I was reading your book through quarantine and crying.
Lots of quarantine tears.
Oh my gosh, so many quarantine tears.
Well, let's get some questions from
Okay.
your fans. I think we have a few, right?
Correct. We do have a few. One question says, Priyanka, what is your sense of home? Is it a physical place? Is it a state of mind?
Well, that's a great question. I talk about my home in the 11th chapter of my book. And no, it's not a physical place. I mean, now, after about 12 years at least of living in rentals and hotel rooms, I finally own a home in LA. So, yes, I do have a physical home, but my mental home has always been the one that I call home. Even if I'm in a hotel room, I make sure I have, the things that make me feel like it's home. I have my favorite products. I'll always carry photo frames of my family. In fact, I have a rotating photo frame where I have videos and stuff as well. I take things that are familiar to me, like my mug, like my pillow, like my blanket. My books go with me, whatever I'm reading. So I create a home wherever I go. So it's more of a state of mind for me than a physical home.
Next question. Social media has made it easy to promote projects and at the same time easy for anyone to post what they think about you, positive or otherwise. How do you keep from getting overwhelmed? And when do you elect to respond to what is said about you?
Social media, I think I was a big champion of social media very early on. When Twitter came to India, I was one of the first actors to actually get on it. And I truly believe social media was created for us to be social. And that's usually a good thing. So I have so much support on my platforms by people who are supportive, who, are the wind beneath my wings when I even take the most crazy radical decisions, like, working in music suddenly, not like, okay, I'm not doing the movies I did in Bollywood and I'm going to try starting all over again in America, but they were there. So I've been a public person for more than 20 years of my life now, and you learn how to tune the negative out. And if you don't know how to tune out you'll always have brickbats and bouquets. That's never, I'm a public person, I'm literally a fashion meme. I'm consumed on every headline, and your Instagram will inform you about me. And to me, that's what this book hopefully will do for people who know me, to maybe get to know me as a girl and as a human being and not just a headline. And for people who don't know me, to get to know that, I come from very unassuming beginnings, and it takes perseverance and, choosing yourself to be the best version of you. And if I can do it, anyone can.
Next question. What do you look for in a role you are considering to play?
If I would watch the movie, it's really quick for me. When I read the script, I'm like, all right, will I watch this? I read it as a script, and then the role is secondary to me always. If you're part of a good project, everyone wins. And like The White Tiger, my new movie, is an example for that. I chased after it. I didn't even know if there was a female part in the movie. I read about it on Twitter. I called the producers, got my agents to call the producers, and lent my services as an EP because, you know, it's an all Indian star cast in this movie, and I wanted to lend support for it to be as mainstream as possible. And that's when Ramin told me that, you know, there's a part and it's a supporting role, and I really wanted to work with Ramin. And it didn't matter because the project in its whole, and right now it's #1 worldwide on Netflix, a completely South Asian cast movie. And that's historic. And, you know, it gives me goosebumps to think about it, because when I started looking for work in Hollywood, that that wouldn't have happened.
Awesome.
And our last question, what was the most difficult thing about writing the memoir? And this person specifically says, did you struggle with anything you wanted to put in, but eventually chose to leave out? And why did you leave it out? And what decision process did you go through?
Yes, I definitely took out a couple of stories, because one, I realized that this book to me was, you know, my almost like a letters to my younger self. It was almost like me examining my life and telling my younger self, oh, well, note to self, don't do that to get attention. You know, sort of that. So it didn't require salaciousness, which I knew a few things would become. Also, I believe that just because I'm a public person, that 90% of my life is going to be consumed by people, and I've made peace with that. I made a deal with the devil when I had that crown on my face and I said, on my head, and I said, all right, entertainment business, I'm gonna do this. Made a deal with the devil. So I can't be hypocritical in saying, oh, I don't want people to know about me. But there's that 10% I can protect, and I keep that close to me. And even though I wrote the book as a journal, I took out the things that I felt were mine, and, you know, my experiences, and for my family to know.
Thank you very much, Glennon, and thank you, Priyanka. It's great having you both at Live Talks Los Angeles. Again, Priyanka's memoir is Unfinished, and you can purchase a signed copy in the link below, and the book is available wherever books are sold.